Welcome and thank you for listening to the most life-affirming, feel-good, just overall cuddly and comfortable show on the internet. Nobody's going to be rendered uncomfortable listening to this show, not even myself, because nobody should feel uncomfortable. Everyone should just be untriggered. We should live in a trigger warning free world. I want a world where there are no such thing as trigger warnings. I want to live in a world where trigger warnings just aren't necessary because everybody's respectful of each other and nobody's uncomfortable. Because mentioning God makes people very uncomfortable. Apparently mentioning God is more uncomfortable than listening to readings of reviews about bug chasing documentaries or articles about documentaries where women drill holes in their heads. And before we go on too far, before we get carried away and get into an hour or two of this show, I would just like to apologize for mentioning God. I would like to apologize for mentioning something that should sit at the top of our hierarchy. Because hierarchy is bigoted and irrational, and if God is up there, that's bad, that's bigoted, that's terrible. But, you know, if bug chasers, if women who drill holes in their heads, that's what sits atop the social hierarchy, that's what you're not allowed to criticize, well, you know what, that's okay. Now, if I can be sincere for a moment, I would like to begin with a question that I received from Reddit, and if you would like to submit a question to Reddit that I will read on the following show, just go to r/commonfilth and check the sticky thread. Okay, I found it. Very new listener, only been able to listen to a couple of episodes, about 4 or 5, so I'm not sure if this has been covered yet. I'm 21 now, and since I lost my virginity at the age of 15, sex for the lulz and jizzing is all I've really seen sex for. Upon listening to the show, I really had to think about my reproductive capacity in a new manner. I used to believe the whole, yeah, it's a biological reaction, no different than a turd thing, back in my edgy teens. Thank you, extremely liberal upbringing. But even then, I've always wanted to get a vasectomy and adopt a child instead, which is causing me some internal conflict. I just can't justify creating a new child. Not saying anyone is wrong for wanting to go forth with creating their own child as a couple, but I feel that if I can help an unwanted child, I'd rather do that. The vasectomy would be to make sure that no pregnancies occur by mistake, but gives me that cum obsessed individual that's wasting their reproductive capacity feel. Sorry for stumbling on my words there. The fact that I only want to adopt through adopt though reminds me that technically it'll be wasted anyways. Would really enjoy to hear your thoughts on this, and thanks a ton for doing what you do. Before I answer this question, you bring up a very common mindset that a lot of people, both young and not so young, have. And that mindset is, oh, sex, it's just a bowel movement. Sex is no different than any other biological function. Now, take into account our present obsession with rape. Our culture's present obsession with, oh my god, there's rape victims everywhere. There are so many rape victims, oh my god. Now, what is rape? Unwillful sex between non-consenting parties. If sex were just a bowel movement, rape would receive no greater punishment than public urination. If sex is merely a biological function, I mean, if we're being rational about it, if we're being purely rational about the purpose of sex, which is a biological function, then rape and public urination, no different. Or, let's make this more accurate. If you shit your pants in public, it should be no more traumatizing or humiliating than rape. Sure, it's embarrassing, but, you know, nothing you can't get over, nothing you can't shake off. But through irrationality, through spiritual means, we know this is not the case. We know that rape causes severe spiritual damage. If there is no God, if sex does not contain a spiritual component, coming from the fact that sex is used to perpetuate your genes, just think about how crazy that is. How unlikely it is that you exist. How unlikely it is that you pass on a replica of yourself. Think about how many sperm are in your average load. Fathom how unlikely it is that you won that race. Your existence is a statistical miracle. But I'm getting off track here. The point I'm trying to make here is that if sex had no function beyond the biological, if it had no impact beyond the biological, why do we treat rape so seriously? This week I saw some exchange, and the topic was, why don't we legalize prostitution? There's no rational argument against prostitution. And if you're approaching this argument from sex is just a biological function, it has nothing to do with anything beyond the biological, okay, fine, that makes sense, I get where you're coming from. And somebody used the argument that all relationships are transactional, and that prostitution is no different than you going on a date with somebody, you going on a date with your girlfriend or your wife, or somebody who you are interested in making your girlfriend or a wife. And this got to me, not in the, oh my god, they're right, my mind is so blown kind of way, but it got to me in the, how can libertarians be so autistic kind of way. Take a closer look at what this dipshit was comparing. Prostitution versus relationships. Prostitution, you are paying for one thing, and one thing only. And look who the end user of prostitution is. Do you think that it's a clean-cut, decent person who you could have a conversation with, who you could trust as a neighbor? Or is it some gutter snipe who, if you had him as a neighbor, would probably lead you to have conversations, weekly conversations with the police about some various disturbance that he's causing? Hey, you're this guy's neighbor, right? Notice anything suspicious? Yeah, officer, he fucks hookers. And he does meth. And he gets the cops called to this neighborhood all the time. But this guy, nah, he's no different. His relationships are no different. He's paying for it. All relationships are transactional. He's just paying for one thing. He's not a pathological piece of shit in any other respect. Nope. Everything happens in a vacuum. People develop in a vacuum. People have their habits develop in a vacuum. People have their hobbies develop in a vacuum, and it has no indicator on the rest of their personality. It has no bearing on the rest of their personality. Nope, not at all. And to say otherwise is irrational, because God doesn't reel, Goyim. But let's be rational here. Let's say that all relationships are transactional and are exactly the same because of that transactional nature. Well, I don't know, maybe you have grandparents in your life. Maybe they've been married 40, 50 years, if things are going the way they should be going. Yeah, grandparents. Let's just assume. I have grandparents who've been married for a long time on both sides of the family. And whenever I visit them or spend time with them, I don't feel like I need to take a bath, like my spirit needs to be cleansed in some way. However, talk to your average guy. Spend an afternoon with the average guy who fucks hookers. You tell me. You tell me if you come out of the experience unmolested. I mean, they're both transactional. They're both engaging in a transactional relationship, right? I mean, if we're looking at it rationally, they're both engaging in what amounts to nothing more than a bowel movement. So, how are they different? How? Oh, right, because there is a spiritual component to these things. One relationship fosters spiritual death and destruction. The other fosters spiritual improvement and enrichment. If I can drop the attitude for a minute, if I can stop being mean for a minute, I would like to address you people who are incapable of seeing the human experience outside of the perfectly logical, perfectly reasonable framework. If you are incapable of experiencing the unseen, you need to refrain from making value judgments. Your priority in life, and this is me being serious, should be doing math and making sure the trains and buses run on time. People fail to realize, I think more often than ever, that the way that individual people choose affects everything. Every decision you make, every action you take, every emotion you express has some impact on somebody else. Let us use the topic at hand here, prostitution, and how it's apparently, if you put it on a spreadsheet, it's no different than having a monogamous, committed, devoted relationship. And this is not directed at the author of this question. I'll get to the rest of that in a bit. This is just directed in general. Let's say you have relationships exclusively with prostitutes, and you have friends, you have family who care about you, who want to look at you, who want to think highly of you, who want to look at you as a positive example in some respect. And they find out that you have a hooker habit. I know that you cannot fathom, the autistic among you, cannot fathom how this choice of yours affects people, how deeply hurting this choice you're making is. I don't know how I could live with myself if my hypothetical child, my pride and joy, had a hooker habit. It would affect my daily mood, my daily conduct, my productivity so profoundly that I would not be able to function. But that's irrational. That's because I believe in God, and God isn't real, therefore guilt is stupid. Having reactions to socially pathological things is stupid. I get emails and questions from people all the time saying that they don't feel spiritual things in their daily life, but they realize the importance of it. And I completely understand this perspective. I get it because I was there once too. But the fuckers who outright deny that there is a spiritual component to things, those who deny the importance of spirituality, spiritual health, you are the people that make suburban motels a lightning rod for illegal activity. Because pimping is the same thing as being married in a long-term relationship. It's the same thing as being married for a half-century. Now, continuing on with the rest of this question, and I will read it again. But even then, I've always wanted to get a vasectomy and adopt a child instead, which is causing me some internal conflict. I just can't justify creating a new child, not saying anyone is wrong for wanting to go forth with creating their own child as a couple, but I feel that if I can help an unwanted child, I'd rather do that. The vasectomy would be to make sure that no pregnancies occur by mistake, but gives me that cum-obsessed individual that's wasting their reproductive capacity feel. The fact that I only want to adopt, though, reminds me that technically it'll be wasted anyway. My thoughts about this situation are this. Presumably you'd be having a child with your wife, or somebody who you would eventually make into your wife. And this child that'll come from this arrangement, this hypothetical arrangement, will either take after you, or this child will take after the mother. If you really know this person on a deep level, this child taking after your wife, that wouldn't be a problem because you would hopefully know how to deal with your wife. And if the kid takes after you, well, even easier if you know how to deal with yourself. Because I'm of the opinion that if you have some problem, if you have some sort of weird thing that you do, some weird impulse, you know how to redirect that. You know how to repress that. If you have a temper, you know that you have a temper, and you would know how to deal with people who have a temper. With adopted children, you are getting two sets of genetics in one child, both of which you have no idea how to deal with. You don't know how to deal with the personality type that child will most likely have. So that is my perspective, and agree with it or disagree with it. The choice is yours. It won't hurt my feelings at all. Alright, continuing. Next question. I have a question relating to your college show last episode. I'm currently taking philosophy and theology classes at a liberal university that offers a decent program. My reasons for studying these relatively useless topics are personal and religious, not because I'm a liberal idiot who picked a humanities to get brainwashed by professors. My plan is to eventually teach at a conservative private college or seminary, somewhere where there is hopefully no pause. Question: is it worth studying humanities if you have a noble if ambitious goal, or is it better to turn around and enter a trade? I've always been better with my brain than my hands, otherwise I probably would have dropped out already. Besides, someone has to take back the academic sector. Any advice is appreciated. God bless. Now, somebody answered you, and I would like to read their answer for the rest of the listeners here. And this comes from DR Monarch. Not CF, but I have a long-winded response for you. Academia is crowded, so you go through undergrad, but people drop out. But with the modest but real work you'll do fine. You apply to graduate schools, you have more trouble getting in, and even inside it's lots of grueling work. Plenty drop out here. You decide to go for a doctorate, even more grueling work. You have entered a bizarre political world of the disagreements of the major schools of your discipline. Just making sure I'm still recording. I don't want to waste my time here. Okay, you decide to go for a doctorate, even more grueling work. You have entered a bizarre political world of the disagreements of the major schools of your discipline. You haven't made any serious money yet. You get lucky enough to get a tenure track position, but you still aren't safe, and the work is still grueling. Then you finally get tenure, at earliest in your mid to late 30s. You are competing with a shitload of other people, and you in particular are going to have to hide your sincere beliefs the entire time. Your colleagues are still going to notice you aren't clapping hard enough, that your office doesn't have a rainbow safe space sticker. Here's my suggestion: major in statistics or computer science, minor in philosophy, theology, or classical language like Greek. Now, even though you're minoring in the subjects you're most interested in, you can still take upper level classes in those subjects. Build a rapport with the professors, ask them interesting questions during their office hours, ask them for book recommendations, and get those books via your university library. Attend every last lecture by a remotely relevant visiting lecturer. Meanwhile, your stats or comp sci degree provides you with a solid backup plan in case you need money. And not only do they provide you with a backup plan depending on whatever thesis, dissertation, etc. you have to do, they provide you with a means of gathering interesting quality data to support whatever point you're going to make. Look up the term digital humanities. This isn't going to be a short-term trend. By being more tech-savvy, you can and will outperform the shitlibs you are competing with. As a final note, fair warning, there are no conservative private colleges or seminaries with no pause. And that's the end of that response to this question. Again, not mine, but DR Monarch's. I have to admit, this is a much better answer than I could ever have given. And I would like to just make a few additions to that. The reason why you don't want to major in one of the humanities is because, like you said, it's very crowded. And you're not going to find any place of work where it's completely free of pause. Even like the least stupid leftist sort of places, they're still going to have that contingent. And most importantly, with regard to actually making a living, humanities prepares you for nothing. It prepares you to work for other people. There are going to be times where you cannot find work with other people. You will not be able to find people willing to give you a paycheck, which is why it is very important to learn a skill that you can market yourself. In other words, self-employment. Because if shit hits the fan in the worst kind of way, either in your personal life or on a society-wide level, you will still have a skill that you can market to other people, that other people will demand. And you can provide this to them without a middleman, without a paycheck from some university or corporation. Because there's no such thing as a self-employed professor. It just doesn't exist. Alright, before I forget, I have these two questions that I just ran out of energy. So I couldn't get to them, but these are from last week. And I feel obligated to answer them because I said I would. So here we go. Big fan of the show. I've been watching for a long time, but this is my first question. I haven't been able to watch all of the radio shows yet, so you might have already addressed this. My question is, have you read any of Ashley Montagu's am I pronouncing that right? I don't know. Views on racial evolution. From what I have read, he believes that Asians and Caucasians are the most neotenous, which has a direct correlation with intelligence. Most anthropologists believe that Homo sapiens began to formally evolve approximately 240,000 years ago in Africa, with Caucasians and Asians branching off 60,000 and 40,000 years ago. Africans remained living in tribes and mud huts best suited for less neotenous, extremely physical lifestyles, where the Caucasians and Asians lived in formal civilizations where neoteny was a valuable trait, as people would value the most attractive and intelligent member of society more highly. Do you think this concept is valid? I'm actually not sure of your views on human evolution at all. Also, what is your opinion on Asians in general? I'm 18 and white, and I like them quite a bit. They have a good conservative culture with strong family units. China is pretty fucked up, but I think if America became more like South Korea or Japan, that would be a big step in the right direction. A stricter, more structured society would probably tone down some of this SJW scum. Sorry for the extremely long question. Feel free to ignore this 100%. It's pretty absurd. No, none of that. This is a good question, but I do admit it's a bit out of my depth, because this is more like human biodiversity stuff, and I like what those people do. People who are interested in that, I enjoy their work, but it's something that's beyond my realm. But I will say this: society, if they have too many people that are one thing, you won't have a very good civilization. Like you said, Africa is mostly made up of physical people who are good at hunting, who are good at beating people up, who are good at defending their tribes. And I'm not saying this in derogatory terms. It's just the fact of the matter. Whether we like violence or not, it is completely necessary, because that famous quote is completely true. I don't know who said it, but men sleep well at night because there are men willing to do violence on their behalf. Those of us who are more neotenous depend on the rough and tumble among us to defend us. But on the other hand, the rough and tumble people, they could use the neotenous, intelligent type of people to defend people with violence more effectively. People who are good at engineering, people who are interested in plumbing, sanitation, irrigation, and so on. Okay, next. OCF, what do you think of people who drop out of society? I hate this feeling of powerlessness and freedomlessness that comes from being a gear in the societal machine. I've been getting the strong urge to live in the wilderness as of late. I'm tired of industrial society and all the useless shit I do on a daily basis to keep myself occupied. There's little to no satisfaction getting a check at the end of the week, and even less from the shit food I eat, the people I speak to, or masturbation. I feel as if living alone in the woods would give me more satisfaction in life. I realize that I shouldn't be basing my life on feelings and feelings of satisfaction, even less so. Should I follow up on this and become a hermit, or try and find a passion in industrial society? On a side note, I have no outdoors experience and would have to spend a while getting ready for my departure. Well, I don't think that any society, anybody who belongs to a society can escape being a gear in the societal machine, as you put it. The problem I think you're having is that you're not working towards anything. You're not working towards any goal that you find to be palatable, to be noble. And I really can't blame you for feeling like this because what sits at the top of our social hierarchy? I've said this so many times. People should know this by now. And even if it wasn't what it currently is, what else would it be? It would just be some other form of bullshit. But all I'll say is that if you can become good at it, if you can do it, if that's really what you believe to be the right thing to do, I could not fault you for that in any way. Next, I've had a series of interconnecting problems that have been haunting me since I was about 14. I'll try to explain as least as I can, since I don't want to reveal too much information for fear I might alienate myself and you'll end up hating me. I've searched up some of the things I've experienced and I'm about 75% sure I have some form of schizophrenia. Even though in daily life I have what I believe to be sound views and keep myself in control. In private, I become distorted and more ugly and pessimistic. It also doesn't help that my family thinks that I'm fucking garbage. I feel as if God has truly abandoned me. Please, CF, what should I do? Much love to your works, and God bless. I become more ugly and pessimistic too if I'm isolated for any extended period of time. That's just how people are. Even if people aren't as social as others, they still need it. They still need to know that other people are there and that there's a friendly helping hand somewhere to be found out there. And it sounds like your family life is not helping matters at all. I really think that if you had a better relationship with your family, you'd be in a better state of mind and you wouldn't think that you have some form of mental illness. I think experiencing kindness from somebody else would go a long way. And I recommend going to church for that. Just some basic Protestant church that's milquetoast, but the people are friendly. Don't go there for the theology. Go there for the people and see if they treat you warmly. Having some sort of depression or going through some sort of rough patch it's pretty complex. And I think that there's no one way to deal with it. Everybody reacts to things in different ways, and you have to figure out, you have to use your intuition and find a way out of it. And it's, in my experience, when I went through a rough patch, it's not something that I could fix. It's just something that gradually got better. So if you take steps to cure what you're feeling, give yourself patience. Patience is a very important thing. You got to treat yourself with patience, and that's unfortunately all I can say about it. But I really hope you feel better soon. Next, let's say voluntary segregation goes into effect and all races form mass communities of their own. Do you believe community bonds would improve? How would our problem-solving capabilities change as a nation? I think it would mean the destruction of modern academia. Whoop whoop. I honestly can't say. I don't know how that would affect the tax flow into academia. I don't know how it would affect the flow of subsidizing ideology. I've said before, a long time ago, that America does need to split up into different entities if we want to have some sort of socially functional society, because America as it stands, it's not a nation. Nobody has anything in common. The only thing that we value is money. America is really a business. And whatever is bad for the bottom line is what's considered a social pathology. It's all very backwards. But we'll continue with your question here. I remember Michael Savage saying LA without sunshine turns into a cultureless sewer where nobody knows each other. Despite that, we see masses of Hispanic communities, and despite vice, they do a good job of sticking together. What would your ideal white community be like? Also wanted to know your position on gun rights. Sorry about my assault rifle question putting you on the spot. I can see why that came off as a baitish question. Well, I don't know anything about Hispanic communities because I'm not Hispanic. I'm sure they all get along well, and I'm sure that they have fine family relations, but again, it's got nothing to do with me. And LA without sunshine turning into a cultureless sewer, that's California in general. Everybody out west has no deep roots here. We are all migrants from different parts of America. We are all the cast-offs from different parts of the country and the world. It's not only a cultureless sewer, it's a genetic sewer. And my position on gun rights are that everybody should have access to them, unrestricted access to them, because the meek among us, as in myself and most people, are subject to violent thugs, the whims of violent thugs and their proximity to us. Guns are the great equalizer. An armed society is a polite society. Hey, CF, I've just gotten out of my first homosexual relationship, thank God. I thought it was going to be completely different from how my previous relationships were with females. I thought that if be able to trust a man more, a pathetic excuse for being a degenerate, I know. I think you made, I don't want to put you on blast, but yeah, I just read this stuff as is, and I understand what you're saying. As to be expected, I was wrong. The only thing better about it was that there was no mood swings. Everything else turned out to be much worse. It ended because he really had no feelings for me, and I couldn't stand his super intolerant attitude of everyone. The only problem is now that there are so many rumors that have defamed my character now that the relationship went down south. I think that after this experience, I'm just going to avoid romantic relationships for a while. My generation simply doesn't know how to function at all. Any thoughts, advice on my generation's millennial relationships and the further damage they will inflict upon the world? Well, millennials have no concept that humans are pair-bonding species, and that man and woman complement one another. Traditionally, I mean, that's how it worked for however many thousands of years of civilization, but you know, what do our ancestors know? They didn't have rainbow flags up in their bedrooms. They didn't make vines. What the fuck do they know? And I would like to bring this up because you brought it up, the mood swings thing and women. Mood swings are training. They test your patience as a man. They are there for a reason. God made these ladies this way for a reason. To deal with fickle children and to also learn how to deal with yourself. How to be a better man for your lady. The reasoning is this: if we are not man enough to deal with mood swings, to deal with something as petty and fickle as a mood swing, we are probably not man enough to do much. Another problem is that millennials think that love and cum are the same thing. They go together like whatever. They go together just fine, when really they're further apart than they are closer together. Think about it. What is the purpose of semen? What is the purpose of jizz? What is in your splooge? Little swimming things that if they come into contact with an egg, they'll burrow into that egg and a baby will be formed. Very basic stuff. This is the purpose. This is the function of cum. Once this process takes place as it should, a man having sex with a woman in her vagina and not anywhere else, that egg is fertilized by the sperm and a baby gets formed. You love that kid. You fucking love this kid because this is your genetic legacy. At least you should. This kid is taking away all of your energy. All of your energy is focused into taking care of this thing, this helpless thing. This sacrifice of time, resources, and energy is an ultimate act of love. All of these things you are sacrificing for this child have very little to do with cum. It has nothing to do with cum beyond how this baby was conceived. And to undertake this responsibility with somebody who you trust very much, there has to be trust before there is cum. There has to be love before there is cum. in order to take this to its logical conclusion, in order to fulfill the purpose of sex. So both the leading up to come and what results from it, that's love. The act itself, not so much. The act itself is an animal thing where all you're focusing on is, man, this feels really good. I'm going to keep thrusting until it feels even better. There's no love there. Do not lie to yourself. And don't lie to yourself that love can be found in the anal cavity. And if you want extensive proof of this, well, go buy Tumblrista's Raw Volume 2. Or 1. Yeah, fuck, buy both of them. It's only $5. What are your thoughts on this article? I want my kids to be gay. I'm not reading that. I can't. I have a lot of questions to get through. I don't want to fall behind again. Let me bookmark it. Yeah, I'll do that. Hello again. For the time being, I don't have any questions that are very deep, but still here are some that I want to know. 1. Thoughts on the movies of gay niggers from outer space? Any of the movies starring Billy Harrington and other similar movies that I don't remember right now. Well, I am familiar with the name Gay Niggers from Outer Space. I know it is a short film, but I have not watched it myself, nor of any movies from the actor, or the actor you described. 2, do you think that people will ever find actual love in their lives? Well, like I said before, if you think that love and sex are the exact same thing, then you're going to have a lot of trouble. And what is the most culturally enriching stuff that you've ever seen? I like to search Fight at School on YouTube and sort by the most recent. Those are always fun to watch. Alright. I've noticed recently that there are some black supremacists who want segregation from white people, and some feminists who don't view transgenderism as valid. I can't help but laugh at the irony in my sympathies with black supremacists and TERFs, which is a trans-exclusionary radical feminism for the uninitiated, and wonder if there is a way that the alt-right/reasonable racial nationalists can reach out to these people to unite under a common goal. Would that be wise? How do you think the Dildoverse would handle such a diverse group directly opposing their agenda? They would just find a way to lump you all in the same category, like how they called Gamergate a bunch of right-wing crazies, which proved to be not the case. Gamergate should have gone full Trump. They should have been Trump before Trump. They should have been, I am whatever you say I am, but they dropped pull pretty quickly, which is unfortunate, but whatever. I don't think that these groups you're talking about should unite, but they definitely should not interfere with one another. Never interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake, and also never interrupt your neutrals if they are playing into your hand. So that's my stance. Do you think humor and memes can help traditionalists / the right? It always seemed to me that more red-pilled and conservative comedians were funnier than more liberal comedians. Why do you think it's inherently funnier, and do you think people with traditional worldviews should pursue comedy to offset the huge amounts of liberals inherent in the entertainment industry? Also, do you like Metal Gear Solid, and are you hyped for the final game? I don't hate Metal Gear Solid. I played the second one, which apparently is the worst one, depending on who you ask, but I don't know, I had some fun with it, but no, I'm not a hardcore fan or anything. I don't keep up with gaming that closely. And I think the reason why, comedians that aren't explicitly left-wing are more funnier is because they aren't afraid of, like I said last week, exploring that gap where expectation and reality don't quite mesh. I think we're at a point in comedy where people think that agreeing with something is funny. Like, oh shit, haha, I heard that in a college class, and now it's being said on TV by this guy who thinks he's funny. Ha ha ha, I've heard of that. That's the state of comedy from what I can tell, but I'm not that into comedy, but if you think you're good at it, yeah, sure, pursue it. I don't consider myself a comedian or a comedy writer or anything, but people all the time tell me that the Tumblristas episodes I do are quite funny. And I think that's because I'm just being direct. I say what I see. I say what I observe. And there's no hiding behind any irony or behind a persona. Nor am I playing into the expectations of generic left-wing anti-SJW. People are hostile to that. People think I'm just going to make fun of Tumblr in this sort of safe for work, politically correct kind of way, and they end up lashing out at me in strange ways. It's happened a few times, but oh well, comes with the territory. Next, hey CF, some days ago I met with one of my mom's friends who is from France, and I just need to share the conversation before I ask my question, or at least describe how it went down. We were at a beach, no one talked, so I tried to start a conversation about how it is in France, and commenting on the whole thing with the jihadist attacks. She starts telling and describing me how the whole thing with religions is going in France, that the country has no official religion, and that Catholics are a minority. Long story short, using this as a gateway, she called Muslims homophobes and bigoted. I, of course, objected and said they do have a lot of points, and that I do believe, like them, that homosexuality is a mental illness, like any logical person. After that, she gets really triggered, and the conversation becomes an argument. She didn't really bring up any evidence. She said that male dogs fuck other dogs, and that it's natural, even though in reality male dogs fuck other male dogs to show superiority. So outed her, but she still used the usual Mo feels good argument that sex's primary goal is feeling excitement and babies are secondary. She also tried to prove that trannies are not degenerate because she has a trans friend that she thought was a good-looking woman, and the thing that I will never forget, all people are bisexual. It's just that heterosexual relations give us kids, and Christians being bigots that made it such an ingrained social construct. This woman clearly has issues. Some severe, deep-rooted mental issues. And I would not be surprised if she was unmarried and childless. What else? Then we just started talking about history and race. Guess where that would take us. I commented that American Negroes shouldn't be categorized as Americans, but Afro-Americans, and that the original colonists should be called Americans. Then she told me that the original Americans are the Native Americans. No fucking shit, but that's what she said. Which led me to go full shitlord and tell her how colonists didn't kill the natives, but it was mostly smallpox. And the reaction was just glorious, but having experienced this, I need to ask, is this truly how people are in the West? Like this was a middle-aged mother, not a millennial on Tumblr. To be fairly honest, I don't think her daughter would think such stuff. I hope at least. I'm sorry if this question is too big. Somebody on Twitter I saw said that they made a tweet and they said that women are the junkyard dogs of conformity. They go as society goes. And where is society right now? Where is Western civilization? Who sits atop the social hierarchy? The people she's talking about, homosexuals and transsexuals. She does not want anybody to question this because she gains some sense of security from the fact that this is what her culture deems as untouchable. These people are beyond any sort of criticism. And yes, this is how people are in the West. I'm not lying to you when I read news stories, when I tell you about people, when I tell you about how our enemies think. I am not lying to you about the nature of this stuff. If I were lying, I wouldn't have a show. I wouldn't have an audience. Next. I'm a 16-year-old listener from Scotland, a country with a very socialized public sector, similar to the Scandinavian countries. This means that everybody has access to free healthcare, education, including university, and dental care, among other things. I'm not intelligent enough for STEM, as I cannot do maths or physics. I have tried, but these subjects are not suited to the way in which my brain works. I am, however, relatively decent when it comes to English and the creative subjects, if you will. I want to study music in university as music is my passion and joy in life. If I was American, I would simply forget the possibility and try to work out a living as a craftsman of some kind, learn a trade or whatever, but since I live in Scotland, I can get into university study for as long as I want, for free. Do you think that it is a good idea to attend university, a subject, simply because I enjoy it? I know about the social aspect of university being shit, but I have non-degenerate friends who have already started to arrange living conditions with. Just wondering what your thoughts were, and if I'm completely retarded. Thank you for taking the time and to read this question, and I hope you have a great day. I think going to university for something that you really enjoy is the worst thing you can do. Not to say that there's nothing to be gained from it. It's just that in my experience, studying a subject that you once enjoyed within the realm of academia, it will destroy any enjoyment that you once had from it. You will find yourself losing the passion that you once had for whatever subject you want to study, whether it's music or, this applies to everyone, not just people who are interested in music. I understand the reasons why you would want to avail yourself of the free things that your nation is offering to you. And I know you say that you have a better brain for creative things. Your brain operates more effectively in that realm. But the problem is once you get to the upper division classes in music, it's going to be incredibly difficult as any other field that will give you more benefit. It's not like you're going to land yourself in some really good band, some touring band, because you have a college degree in music. You still have to audition, and they're going to look at your audition. They're going to look at your body of work. Not, oh, did he graduate from college? Well, he's in the band. No one in the history of anything has ever been hired for a gig because they had a degree in music. So from every conceivable angle, from just maintaining your enjoyment, your passion for music and your job prospects, studying music is a terrible idea. All right, next. So growing up in a Christian family, my parents did a good job on keeping me morally sane. But making friends with a lot of people who had parents that were very leftist exposed me to very sad situations on what our culture can do to family and such. My experiences from all of them led me to write this poem. It's pretty quick, I don't write that much. I wanted to know if you had any sort of same experiences as a kid, or if you were sheltered from most of it. How I Lost to the Left, a poem or song or whatever by me. Me, well, I'm just another Christian-loving dad, trying to raise family right in this culture Marxist fad. My son and girl barely 2 when my wife packed up and left. She said marrying me was regrettable and oppressive. I never heard her talk like this before. She said she wants to party with friends and doesn't want to be a mom anymore. I don't know what put those hedonistic thoughts in her head. 8 years later, I found out she drank and smoked till she turned dead. Guess she was a victim of media moral bereft. And that's how I lost my wife to the left. Trying to raise a teen boy as a single dad is sure hard. Sent him to school so he won't turn out a complete retard. He learned the basics like English, history, math, but he gave in to others telling him lies, bullcrap, and trash. Told me on Sunday how he hates to go to church, and how wants to go have sex with girls that he searched. I said, son, that life is wrong and degenerate. You might think it's fun now, but later you'll regret. He walked out and yelled, screw you, God is dead. I'll just live with my bud, screw life, I'll play video games instead. I guess the culture of school made him morally deaf, and that's how I lost my son to the left. My daughter was that last one to stay with me. I tried harder to protect her from the outside degeneracy. However, she sort of isolated herself, rounded up getting some internet filth. She came up to me one day saying she identifies as a man, and that she now wants a transformation. Just the idea of her mutilating her body like that almost made me hurl. I told her, you'll always be my beautiful little girl. Just because you like guy stuff doesn't make you a girl any less. But she insisted a transformation was for her best. Her crazy friend next day picked her up in her car. They said, I'm just a bigot, and they can be whatever they so-called truly are. I yelled, I can't lose you too yet. My heart was beating, sobbing, hurting in my chest. And that's how I lost my daughter to the left. That's how I lost to the left. I wonder how many people out there whose life story might as well be this poem you sent me. It breaks my heart knowing that there's even one person out there who fits the description this poem provides, but I guarantee you it's more than one. Ordinary, innocent people who just want to have a family, who want to do their best for their family, and finding themselves being consumed, their families being consumed by forces they didn't even know existed. Seeing the spiritual antipathy that surrounds us, dealing with it, talking about it, and thinking about how it applies to my own life, it makes me realize how lucky I truly am, how fortunate I was to have relatively decent people throughout my life. And I think a lot of people, they have decent people mostly in their lives, throughout their lives, but this leads to a lack of imagination, which is why you do need to be exposed a little bit to the dark side in a controlled way, so that you don't become naive and this Pollyanna type character. There's a lot of people who haven't had a whole lot of wrong in their life, and they take this innocent view of everything. They view everything as innocent, even the most socially pathological things, because they have an excess of empathy, and it's being directed in all the wrong ways. Like a website I bring up a lot, sexchangeregret.com. You read through that and you realize that accepting transgenderism as valid is the most hateful thing you can do. How much hatred do you have to have towards people to encourage them to make a decision like getting their genitals mutilated and injecting their body full of hormones that shouldn't be there? I think most people who are opposed to things like this, things like the things you described in your poem, they initially have an aversion to it because they actually care about the people who view these things as valid, these deviancies as valid. But then they start believing what other people say about them. They start believing the things other people say about them. And people believe it. I am a hateful bigot. I was so ignorant, not realizing the impulse of empathy they felt initially, which informed that opinion, which created that initial opinion. What the left describes as hate speech isn't hateful at all. It is informed by empathy, by compassion. We know what happens when you lead a life that is left-wing approved. We know that it leads to ruin, that it leads to horribly damaging situations. It leads to the worst kind of personal degradation you could possibly imagine. And we do not want to see our fellow man have to suffer like that. But what do you expect when tough love is not a part of the culture's current nomenclature? So with all that being said, thank you very much for the email. And here's the next one. Being that you're in California, I think, right? Do you ever listen to talk radio's Michael Savage? I hear a lot of similarities between you and him on America's culture, degeneracy, active brainwashing of youth via universities. Don't know if you share similar political views as well, but what do you think of him? I actually am influenced by him a lot. He's one of the first radio personalities I was listening to. I was listening to however many years ago. What I respect most about him is that he holds multiple degrees, multiple advanced degrees in medicine and science. So he's not a career talking head. He's not just some guy who reads all the talking points, all of the ideological bullet points, and just makes a radio show about that. I think he's truly well-rounded, and not in the, oh, you have to take a prerequisite class in college to be well-rounded kind of well-rounded. What people consider well-rounded is bullshit. Being genuinely well-rounded is being interested in a wide variety of subjects and excelling at them. So Michael Savage is a unique specimen when it comes to talk radio, and he's an older guy, so there's some stuff that he misses. There's some stuff that he's not up to speed with, and probably never will be. But when it comes to mainstream talk radio, I don't think you can ask for a better personality. Here's next up. Why do you think some people never grow out of consumerism? I can understand it when you are a kid or something, because I used to like getting a bunch of video games and toys, but as I grew up, I realized my possessions didn't make me happy, and learned to find happiness in other things. I don't know if you ever noticed the whole flower crown thing being a strictly Tumblr thing. It's like another thing that helps me identify which people are less than desirable, to put it kindly. I'm not familiar with the flower crown thing, but I am familiar with dyed hair, dyed armpit hair, and dyed pubic hair. I was showing a friend of mine the dyed pubic hair thing. And that's what you gotta do. You have to expose this stuff to regular people to show how fucking absurd the enemy is. But people live lives of wanton consumerism because they don't know anything better. They like the temporary buzz that getting a new toy provides. And they think to themselves, wait, if I can do this all the time, if I can have this buzz all the time, that means I'm happy. It's like the difference between straw and wood, burning it. You light some straw on fire, it burns quickly, but it burns out quick. You get a nice big log, it doesn't burn quite as quickly, doesn't get up to maximum temperature quite as quickly, but it stays there. But the problem is most people have high time preference because we live in a culture that is high time preference. Why do we have democracy? Democracy is give it to me now. This is a problem now. Not realizing that the problems they think are so fucking important are myopic and petty and temporary. If people knew how to have long-term, lasting, deserved happiness, I don't think they would do it. I don't think they would take the time to get their minds to a place where they could have that, because it takes too long. That's too hard. I'd rather buy a smartphone every however many months. I'd rather get a new handbag or whatever. You can't sell people on delayed gratification because it's just not what's written in their genetic code. And there's not a whole lot you can do to redirect that impulse. It's very difficult to redirect the impulses these individuals have, which is why the best you can do is limit their power, limit their influence over society. And how you do that, I have no idea. Next, hey CF, I really appreciated the last episode you did regarding college. I'm a freshman this year, and it helped remind me that there are more important things than the pursuits of pleasure and acceptance in the perverted culture which exists here. However, this is the first time I've lived away from home, and it's made me quite lonely. While I'm lucky enough to be rooming with a friend from high school, I haven't met anyone new, and I have difficulty talking to people. My roommate spends a lot of time with his family and his girlfriend. I have nothing in my life besides school and a fast food job where I work until midnight on the weekends. I spend the rest of my time alone in my room watching anime and listening to shows like yours. When I'm outside, I see people my age out having fun. I see couples holding hands as they walk down the street. I see some kind of magic in their expressions, their words, their shared glances, as if something beautiful is lost on me, just beyond the reach of my fingertips, something which would complete me. On some level, I know this is illusory, but it still saddens me. On top of that, college itself seems pointless to me, and I have no plan for the future. So how do I deal with the loneliness? I've heard you talk about how people need to learn to enjoy their own company. How does one do that? Also, is there any hope for me to find a decent woman here? I never learned how to talk to women, and I don't know where I would meet one. It seems like there's no hope for you if you missed out on having a relationship in high school. Would a church group be a good place to find an eligible girl? Any advice would be much appreciated. I think that a church group would increase your likelihood of finding a woman who you could have a long-term relationship with, who you could eventually turn into a wife. And this is not to say that going to a church group is a guarantee of that, because I'm sure there are a lot of girls that go to church, who go to youth groups to alleviate the guilt they have brought on by being a whore. And I'm not going to say that you don't need to be outgoing, because you do. It's not like you need to be a life of a party kind of person, but learning how to make small talk with people, yeah, that's a very valuable thing, because how else are you going to develop friendships if you can't start small? Hell, you're already living with one of your friends, and most people don't marry their high school sweethearts. It's not something that happens too often, at least people that I've known. So don't worry about getting a late start on it. There are some people that say you have to do it early and often in order to have success with relationships, but I don't subscribe to that theory. But I think that you should invite your friend to do something. Go to an art gallery, go to a slam poetry reading and make fun of it. Do something. And approach strangers, approach mutual friends, and teach yourself how to do that. Develop some social skills. The only way to develop social skills is to socialize. And if you aren't good at that, you're going to be awkward at it first, but learn from your mistakes. Analyze yourself. Don't be afraid to fail. Because I think that people learn a lot more from their failures than they do from their successes. I know it's a cliche, but if you know nothing but success, your head gets too big and you're setting yourself up for a rather large fall. And how you learn to enjoy your own company is, I know this seems counterintuitive, be around people. Be around friends. Go spend some time with some friends. Spend enough time around them. They do things that you don't really like. They do things that will annoy you. And once you're alone, once you're away from that, you realize, I don't do the things that annoy me. And you'll start enjoying your own company that way. And the next time you feel the urge to sit in front of the TV or computer and watch anime, go for a walk instead. Go walk. Don't even have a destination in mind. Set off in one direction. Go off in a direction that seems the most interesting, and just walk. You'll get a lot more from it, I guarantee it. Alright, next. And we have an update from an email that was sent some time ago. Remember my father who had the 18-year-old degenerate girlfriend? Well, it turns out she actually cuckolded him with a black guy of all people. Luckily for me, it has shown him the light and he no longer desires to fuck 18-year-old whores. What do you think? Are you even surprised? No. And he shouldn't be surprised either. Some girl with I have trans friends. And also I fuck men who are twice my age. It's like red flags everywhere. And he's too dumb to see it because she's got fresh eggs. This is what people don't realize. Young women have an incredible amount of power. They have the power to render people who apparently have their shit together into complete fucking idiots. So thanks for the update, and hopefully that your dad fucking keeps his head on straight from now on. And if my email will load, we'll get to the next one. I know, it's a recurring theme. Alright. There we go. Hey, CF, I have some advice to ask of you, or maybe just your thoughts on my situation, and then a criticism I want to hear you respond to. I need to preface this by saying I am not a spiritual person, although my parents in their age have rediscovered their spirituality. My mother has been going to a church nearby her house, and my father still goes to church where he lives in another state, but still close enough to drive and see him. My father has said several times that he thinks I should be a Freemason like he is, and I have gone to some of their award ceremonies, which my father is a pianist at. And he talks about them in glowing but non-religious terms. He speaks of them as a fraternity or brotherhood. I heard you make a remark about Freemasons earlier, although I don't remember your thoughts on them. Should I take up my father's offer? What are your thoughts on that? And finally, my criticism. You've said that you're not very interested in politics because you said they don't matter. But what about the fact that the president can assign justices that will pass laws and influence cultural norms such as Roe v. Wade and the recent gay marriage decision? I said that I'm not interested in politics because there's very little I can change about it. And that's not to say that I don't keep up on the news, it's just that I don't feel like talking about it. I don't feel like stating the obvious over and over again. Like somebody like Rush Limbaugh, who I don't hate really, but I don't know how you beat your head against this wall, this immovable object, over and over again 5 days a week. I don't understand it. There are policies that I would like to see implemented, but they don't exist in the minds of any politician, which goes to show you how little of an imagination they have. Like, for example, this transgender thing, this transgender trend. You could easily mitigate the societal effects of that if you said, okay, you're going to change your name. You want to change your name legally? You want to change your name? Well, that's going to reset your birth certificate to the day that you changed your name. So in the eyes of the law, you are 0 years old once this happens. You could pass a law that says all marriages that do not produce a new child between the two people involved in the union, and only the two people involved in the union, if the child does not share genetics from both spouses, the marriage will be considered null and void. There are a lot of things you can do to combat these various cultural forces that are dominating us, that are infecting our way of life. But nobody has any imagination and no one cares to develop one. No one in any position of power. I'm not going to beat myself over the head with these fantasies. Like, if we did this, things would be good. What a terrible way to live. Like, just this one thing. If this one thing were different, then everything else would be good. How can you live with yourself? If Obama wasn't president, everything would be good. Look, the guy's a piece of shit. But it starts with the people that put him there. Americans, by and large, are pieces of shit. And as for Supreme Court justices, what control do I have over that? When you vote for the president of the United States, your vote is statistically insignificant. It matters not. So even if you do vote for the right guy, you can't control who the fuck he's going to appoint. So I refuse to torture myself. I refuse to torture myself with these what-if scenarios. As for the Freemason thing, I would hate to say this, but you're on your own with that because I have no idea. I don't know the first thing about them other than they're a society. They're some sort of secret society, one of those types. Not saying they're completely secretive, but, just an organization of people that I don't know what they do. You seem like you have more of an idea what they do than I do. And if I mentioned them before, it was probably in some joking, non-serious kind of way. So, yeah, I was probably making a conspiracy theory joke. Alright, next. What are your opinions on people who call themselves trans, the real ones, not the Tumblr hangers on? Personally, I think they deserve pity and support to overcome their delusions. I know some people take a more punitive view. Well, it all depends on whether or not they're repentant of it. sexchangeregret.com changed my mind regarding how we should treat them, but it also changed my mind on how they should treat themselves. They should treat themselves as if, they're making a mistake and it needs to be corrected. So people who are honest with themselves and realize the damage that needs to be undone, I do have that view that they should be pitied and supported. But you can't have forgiveness without repentance, and how many of them are repentant? I don't know. Should a person convert for the sake of one's future marriage and children? I don't feel like I could be a true believer. Asperger's likely contributing to that. But I'm considering converting to prevent degeneracy. Do you have suggestions, or should I stay a secular moralist? Well, if you want a family, and honestly, I do not recommend that people with developmental issues have children. I mean, that's a pretty eugenic view, but I don't recommend it. But taking your wife and kids to church, just some relaxed, laid back church, like I mentioned earlier, one that's not theologically great, but the people are chill. That's fine. That'll be better than leaving your kids to their own devices. It's all about getting them socialized. It's all about getting them socialized with the right people. What do you think of the current state of WWE? Well, I don't talk about wrestling that much because I've only been following it closely since this year's WrestleMania. But I'm not like one of these people that's going to bitch and moan about every single decision they make, because I don't think it's my place to. I sit back and I enjoy the show, and it entertains me. It's a nice diversion that is less paused than that is less full of HIV than other forms of media, other forms of scripted media. So yeah, I enjoy it, and I have no opinions on the direction it should take. I just hope it doesn't take a dildo direction. Hey, Common Filth, I really love your show. Your show and one friend of mine are really the only breath of fresh air I get. Anyway, I was wondering what your opinions are towards the meat industry, towards preachy vegans. Personally, I hate how they defend animals but ignore their fellow man. Well, they are novelty seekers, so of course they will place the values of these creatures over people. And vegetarians, they're less annoying and stupid than vegans, because that they're allowed to eat animal products, just not animal meat. And I understand that, because what is a cow? What does a cow do other than provide humans with food? Not necessarily through its meat, but through its milk. And from milk comes cheese and all sorts of other good stuff. So avoiding animal products completely is just, that's a level of insanity that has proven itself to be just that, insane. And as for the meat industry, what I think about the meat industry, I haven't looked enough into it. I don't know anybody who works in the meat industry, and I don't really have any sources that I trust when it comes to the meat industry. I know there's PETA, and they show, oh look, they're forklifting these cows, they're abusing them. It's like, okay, yeah, they treat them rough to get them killed. Yeah, I get it. It's like, I don't want to see it, but you know what? What else are they gonna do? Hey CF, what do you think about Caitlyn Jenner facing jail time? Do you think he deserves more than 1 year? Here's the link if you want to look at it for yourself. Yeah, sure, put him in jail. Why not? The world needs less shitty drivers, not more. And I think we can all agree on that. And why don't we end it there? Because I'm out of questions and I am out of things to say, and I feel my voice going a little bit again. Anyway, thank you all very much for sending in your questions. I think I got to all of them, and there were some links that I didn't get to, but I'll try to remember to get to those throughout the week, and maybe I'll talk about them next week. And before I forget, Tumbleristas Raw Volume 3 is coming out soon. I just started recording it this week, and I don't have an ETA because I don't know when it will be done. I'm approaching this differently than the first two collections. I'm actually recording it as I go this time rather than writing out a script and reading off the script. And I recorded the first one. I think it's the best thing that I've ever done. So I don't want to set the expectations too high. It's just being on Bandcamp, I can unleash myself a bit. Because on here, it's on YouTube, you have to limit yourself. You can't say everything you want to say. But limitation leads to creativity. I'm not complaining. So yeah, Tumbleristas Raw Volume 3. It's in production right now, so look for that in the next couple of weeks, and I'm excited for it, and I hope you're excited for it as well. And of course, if you haven't listened to Raw 1 or 2 yet, I recommend that you do. So keep an eye on my Bandcamp page, commonfilthradio.bandcamp.com. Should be coming out in the next couple weeks. So with all that being said, you guys be good to each other, take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you later.